All right, as I told you all, we're going to have, we're being honored today that unfortunately General Thomas Todd could not be here, but he sent his stand-up act with Colonel Billy Jackson, who is the PM Utility Chairs panel for him. And so what I'm going to do is have him bring the PEOs up, and they're going to have a discussion. And Billy, you're going to explain to me on behalf of Thomas Todd as to why I can't get more H-64s and CH-47s down here at CCAD, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I'm getting money from all the CCAD folks. Terry, are you in the house? Or are you next door?
No, everybody's here.
Everybody's here. You got them all. All right.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning. So thanks for the introduction, sir. My name is Colonel Billy Jackson. I'm actually the PM for utility helicopters, but I've been asked by General Todd to come support here and speak on behalf of PEO Aviation. Along with me on stage, I've got Mr. John Smith, who's a log chief for Apache, Colonel Greg Fortier, who's a PM for cargo helicopters, and my acting log chief, Mr. Charles Strobridge, Utility Helicopter Project Office. So look at me as General Todd. If you have tough Black Hawk questions, just turn to my left to Mr. Strobridge. He's got all the answers to the tough Black Hawk questions. Okay, can we get my first slide up, please? Okay. We're actually going to start with the PEO Aviation charts. I'm going to go ahead and get started while they get the charts up together. Okay, so my intent here for General Todd is to give you a kind of a rough overview of what PEO Aviation is. And I hate to cover plowed ground. Can I get a hand up if you are not aware of PEO Aviation's mission, where we are, and what we do? Okay, so I'll try to hit some high points. We have an hour to cover this material, and I would like to leave some time for questions at the very end. So I'll be relatively brief as I cover, and then I'll ask the guys to probably take about 10 minutes and leave about 20 minutes or so for questions at the end. Okay. No, we're going to keep going.
Here you go, sir.
Anyway, sorry. Okay, so it's kind of helpful if I get the organization chart, but let me tell you a little bit about PEO Aviation. So PEO Aviation was actually created in 1997. Right. Underneath PEO Aviation, which you'll see in a future organization chart, we have 8 project management offices under PEO Aviation. Probably twice the number of program management offices than any other PEO across ASALT. Right. So we have 3,100 employees, which is a mix, obviously, of military, government, civilians, contracts, and matrix folks. This year alone, we'll manage over $5.6 billion and probably roughly almost $26 billion over the FIDEP. Manage a myriad of ACAT-1 programs and special programs, and I will tell you from an understanding of PEO Aviation's mission and what we do, it's very difficult to look at one particular program office and say, now I understand really the scope of what PEO Aviation does. So we have to do the traditional acquisition from a milestone B to a full rate production and sustainment, and I'll talk a little bit about our partnerships in that process. But you also have other programs like Lakota Helicopter, which is basically a commercial off-the-shelf platform, which is procured and sustained by the PM. You have fixed-wing aircraft assets that are also sustained by the PM. So we're very reticent to walk around and beat our chest and say we are everything, we are the life cycle manager for the program, because on larger platforms we are not the sustainment authority for that program. It's very important that relationship we do have with AMCOM with regards to sustaining that platform because quite frankly we could not do that. And so most people that come in and understand, they say, hey, PEO, you are the life cycle manager for the program. And that is true, right? Statutorily, we are required to do that. But I think where our part is in understanding the engineering expertise that we bring to the table in conjunction with our AMCOM and our life cycle sustainment partners. So in most of my large platforms, we have matrix folks from AMCOM, from ALC specifically, that sit in that office, and we work hand in hand to make sure we can sustain that platform to meet readiness goals as well as to meet reliability goals and to look for opportunities to increase the reliability in those platforms. What's that?
Here it is, sir.
The CD. I think I got everybody's attention. We'll just keep going. Okay, so let's talk about the organization. So across the organization, Brigadier General Thomas Todd has been in the organization since, I believe, December timeframe. We've got a relatively new deputy, Mr. Pat Mason in SES, who's a wealth of military service, both in the test community as well as the program management community. Across there, we talked about we have 8 project management offices. Aviation systems led by Colonel Matt Hanna, that really does, predominance of his work is air traffic control stuff, aviation ground support equipment, radios, and basically anything that's cross-platform that supports the program offices. And we have attack helicopters led by Colonel Joe Heckrell, the Apache office. Pretty clear what he does, legacy model Apaches and the new build Echo model Apaches. Then we have Colonel Greg Fortier, who's sitting on this staff on this panel today, who's the cargo helicopter project office, and he manages basically CH-47F and then engineering change proposals and modernization for that platform. You have myself, Utility Helicopter Project Office. Our main focus, obviously, is 4 mission design series for Black Hawk, the legacy fleet of Alpha Lima, which Mr. Strobridge will talk a little bit about what we're doing with those. The Victor, which is currently under development, and the Mike model, which is currently in production. We have almost 900 of those been produced specifically for the U.S. Army and well over 1,000 for Army and FMS customers. We have Colonel Steve Clark, who many of you may not know who he is or what he does. He used to be the fixed wing PM. He now leads the non-standard rotor wing office. So non-standard rotor wing is typically a platform that's demanded by any customer, OGA, DOD, or FMS, that is not a standard platform to our Army inventory, most notably MI-17, MD-530, and Huey-2s. We have Mr. I got the charts up. PM Fixed Wing, Colonel Tal Shepard, Special Electronics Mission Aircraft, or SEMA aircraft, and all transport aircraft. And then newest to our portfolio is the PM for Improved Turbine Engine and Future Vertical Lift, Colonel Roger Kirkendall, who also as 05 led the ITE office getting to a milestone development decision. And last but not least, Colonel Courtney Cody in his last year of command, leading all platforms UAS, so tactical, medium, common systems. If you've been to past Luther Jones, you'll note that particular platform is sustained wholly by the PM office through CLS type contracts. Along the left, you basically see what we used to call APOs or assistant PEOs, staff functions. Those have now been recreated and positioned to be aligned with our other 2-star staff commands. And so you'll notice we have basically the Chief of Staff and then G1 all the way through G8 and Special Initiatives Group. So the whole goal there really is to align ourselves with other agencies, both support us and those we support them, and then we talk the same language. Next chart. Okay. I talked a little bit about our mission, but our mission statement is simply this: design, develop, and deliver the key capabilities needed to our warfighters in the field. So you're going to hear a lot about acquisition reform and acquisition change. I'd ask that we not discuss that in this particular forum, because I believe next week or so at AUSA we're probably going to get further guidance from the Acting Secretary of the Army on where we're going to go as far as Army acquisition, modernization, as well as initiatives to reform acquisition. So, but our mission today is very clearly defined by our user, and we're continuing to execute that mission. So if you look down at the bottom, right, we run 4 out of the Chief's 18 ACAT-1 programs that are selected acquisition report programs reported to Congress. I will tell you all 4 of those programs are on cost or on schedule. So one ACAT-D program, 12 ACAT-1 Charlie programs, and a number of other than ACAT-1 programs run special missions. And the scope really is from producing aircraft that are going to be training helicopters that are commercial off-the-shelf FAA aircraft for Fort Rucker and the latest flight school aircraft, to providing Mi-17s and Black Hawks for Afghanistan. So you can get the idea about the challenges that we have within our organization. Next chart, please. We'll leave the chart, but I do want to pick up one thing. One key mission to General Todd, I'm sure he would win a foot stomp while I'm here. So 3,100 employees that we discussed, either military, matrix, or government people. One of the key focuses, we're only as good as the people that work in our organization. If you look across our organization, you would see probably the average age of our employee is, to include myself, is in their 50s. So the concept here is in times where maybe there will be freezes or lack of opportunities to hire new employees, is how do we manage the talent pool we have? How do we continue to develop those older employees, and how do we make space for the new employees to come in, to attracting talent, cultivating that talent to replace us later on? I think that's a key tenet of what General Todd is trying to do in this organization. The slide you're looking at now really shows kind of how we view our stakeholders, the lines of communication. So outside that, we have other PEOs inside of ASALT that we do business with in order to execute our mission. Inside of that, we really look at those stakeholders that are at the 2-star level that General Todd interfaces on a day-to-day basis, that the O6s and the O5s in our organization, as well as those civilian equivalents, interface on a day-to-day basis. So we're drumming into our command this concept of back to the Council of Colonels concept, where when problems are surfaced up to the GO level, to the colonel level, those problems have been resolved, and lower levels it's entirely possible. So this really illustrates how we're mapped. So General Todd, as you're well aware, meets once a week, and with what's called the 6-pack, which now I understand may include a larger membership of 8-pack. And you see some of those same people on there. So. And it's really the aviation enterprise, and quite frankly, what is the strength of PU Aviation and the aviation enterprise is really the fact that 2-star and 2-star equivalents across the aviation enterprise speak on a weekly basis. They speak with one voice to the Pentagon, and we understand where we're going and how we're going to get there. So everything from obviously from AMCOM to the Center of Excellence at Fort Rucker. At times we bring in the USASAC commander who's not an aviator, who is also very important to our mission. Obviously, Mr. Shipley up at Fort Eustis. And most recently now, I believe we're engaging very heavily with the new vice, as well as the Deputy Force Com Commander, Lieutenant General Richardson. Next chart, please. Okay, so this is our aviation priorities, and it really gives us sort of a snapshot of our guidance, really from DA and the secretariat level of our near-term mission and our long-term mission and where we're trying to get to. So the end state is basically a portfolio that's not only integrated, but gives us the asymmetric advantage on the battlefield that we're always looking for. The challenge has always been, how do we prepare for the future being unknown, continue to modernize a fleet that's basically needed today to continue to support global missions, as well as I think we're all aware of where we've been for the last 15 years. So it's pretty easy to get a platform that meets performance requirements, but to meet a platform that meets performance requirements, reliability requirements, and maintainability requirements within a cost affordance or cost bogey is really the challenge we have, right? And to integrate all those platforms on the battlefield. That's our goal, that's our strategy. If you look across those lines of effort, that is how the PEO intends to meet that mission. Next chart. Okay. Top left, you see what you've always seen is this is kind of our acquisition, get on the stage briefing. It's the horse blanket. It's really so we can look at you and tell you how difficult our mission really is. I will tell you the horse blanket is a good place to start. I've never seen a program run by the horse blanket. We, in the acquisition, especially in PU Aviation, look at this as opportunities to be extremely flexible, and we are. So I would argue that we are successful because we understand what the framework looks like, we understand what our mission is and statutory requirements are, and we do what we need to get the mission accomplished. So the challenge I discussed that I asked not to discuss really are acquisition reform, funding instability in times, and I don't think any of these things are really anything new for us. What we are seeing challenges too is an idea that we should leverage as much of an industrial base as we possibly can to accelerate programs, understanding that we need to know what data rights we, the government, actually need to own in order to sustain the system, and that's one of the challenges going forward. Survivability. Areas of the world that are going to be denied to aviation platforms are going to be key, whether we're talking about assured PNT or we're talking about areas where the missile threat is a concern for the Army, and of course cybersecurity. So we're working to understand what the cybersecurity threats are and how we can do that. So even this week, we've got guys trying to crack into a Mike model Black Hawk to determine where the vulnerabilities are on that particular platform. And I'm sure if you talk to all the other PMs, they would say that that is ongoing today. So understanding the threat and realizing how we're going to team with industry to counter that threat. We're never going to have a complete solution. We're never going to fix it. It's really just staying one step ahead of the bad guys. So underneath those challenges, we have opportunities, right? So these challenges bring us closer together as an aviation enterprise. We're looking at future airborne capable environment opportunities, so how we can produce things faster, react faster to requirements changes from our user, as well as cybersecurity threats. Condition-based maintenance is still the way of the future for the Army. We are still looking for ways we can reduce wrench turner time, increase reliability on our platforms, and provide that operational readiness that our user is looking for. Rapid innovation, how do we get there? How do we extend the S&T world? How do we make sure that we have technology readiness levels, we're ready to go to a milestone B decision, and we're not going to have any undue risk associated with that? And then, of course, acquisition reform, and I expect within the month that picture will become more clear for all of us. Next chart. Okay, I think one more. It might be my get off the stage chart. So if you have questions for me, we'd like to hold all questions to the end, and I'll be here till they kick me off stage. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Smith. I'm the product support manager for the Apache helicopter project office up in Huntsville. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. And have the as many Quad A events are the family reunions of all the people, and in today's case, some children of some people that I served with who were on the panel up here prior to me. So it's always good to be amongst the family. So what I want to talk to you about this morning is the 64 program, how we got to where we are, how we've been sustaining the airplane, and what our current plans are going forward. Next chart. Okay, the evolution of the Apache. Apache has evolved from the A model back in the mid-'80s time frame to you see today in the E model. The Alpha model were all new build airplanes, so they were built from scratch, but as we transitioned into the D model between the Block 1s and Block 2s, there were reman airframes with a small quantity of new builds. That also continued into the E model program. We'll talk about that just in a moment. With the numbers you see up on the left, it's the current ACAT 1C program for the E model. It's actually two ACAT 1C programs under one NBS. We have a remanufacture program, and we also have a new build program. Next chart. Okay, so to get to that E model, how we get to the E model out to the field today, it's been in increments that have been fielded. The LRIPs for the original aircraft fielded, it covered a couple of two cabs, 16th and the 101st. Then we've migrated to the first cab division as the first units that were equipped with the V4, and you can see the capabilities that are associated with each. From the maintenance side of the house, the V4 introduced a really outstanding capability that's been developed on the V4 variant. The aircraft's embedded diagnostics, if it detects an issue, it'll auto-generate a Blue Force tracker message that goes back to the stamp ground station within the PC to give a heads up that this is the issue that's occurred on the airplane. So that'll give them the time to get the P4 T2 process rolling before the airplane ever gets back. The unit at Fort Hood has fully embraced that capability and incorporated it into their unit operations. It provides, we've sat back in Huntsville and watched them take off for NTC, and they have their standard reports that they send where you can tell when they close the doors to get the cabin to get ready to crank the airplane. It's a phenomenal capability that's brought along with the V4. When we move into V6, the V6 also will have some great maintenance capabilities built into it. You know, the IETM itself is what we used to call level 5 IETM, but the IETM will be interactive. It can plug into the airplane and talk to the airplane to see what's wrong with it, run flips, diagnostics, and help reduce the mean time to repair, help get the airplane back in the air, and thus improve the combat capability and readiness of the airplane. Those capabilities will be cut into the field in August 2019. The V4 airplanes currently are, like I said, being fielded at Fort Hood. Now we're at Fort Riley, Fort Carson being fielded. The LRIP airplanes I mentioned previously are being undergoing modification upgrades from baseline to V4. Those will all be upgraded to 4. Then when V6 gets cut in, the retrofit process will begin. Previously, our AAO was, as you saw on the other chart, in June of this year, the AAO for the 64E was increased to 767. The same process will be followed through. What those numbers are going to work out to be, that's going to be part of Army decision-making that's going on, whether they're going to be reman, new build, and what that actual schedule works like to be. But it's a busy time for all of us in the acquisition world to keep up, and sustaining them is equally, and as the log guy, I would like to think is even more challenging than the PM side, but that's the loggy's perspective, right? So next chart. So what is that going to look like over time then for us as a fleet? The Block 1 airplanes you see, those Block 1 airplanes, they're all been inducted into the reman program. There are no more of those in the fleet, and when those airplanes are transformed into an E, their Block 1 tail number will be retired, and then they will come out as an E model airplane. Block 2s are next. Their inductions have started. You can see the crossover times. But where the depot is going to play a big role in this for us is repairing of the Delta model as well as E model airplanes. We've got 6 sitting down here now, plus there's 1 Guard airplane down here in the Delta model fleet and 1 Echo model. The Delta models are required to feed the E model production line, so it is important. It is key that we get those airplanes turned as fast as we can, realizing the challenges of that they come in for crash damage or instance, and they become like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you get until you open it up, and unfortunately you find a lot of things that you never thought you would use. So it generates some challenges, but the depot folks, the ALC folks is leaned forward to work on better processes and getting parts on the shelf or in the pipeline to support that process, to speed it up. So we look forward to the future and what the depot will be able to do for us for an airframe. Next chart. Over time, as the airplanes have evolved from the Alpha to the Echo, the support strategies that have been employed have been a combination. We have legacy, transactional-based type components. Those are the D-legacy parts. We get those from our OEMs. The depot repairs them. We've got OEM M&O contracts, and we buy new parts from our commercial partners. We have the parts that are unique to the Delta model and now the Echo model that are supported through a PBL contract with Boeing. And Boeing work order and workload some of that work back here to the depot. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. We have life cycle contractor support for FCR, and they have a very good relationship with the depot at Tobyhanna, working on parts for the MTADs. So, next chart. Now, as far as Corpus Christi goes, this chart kind of shows all the common and unique parts that we have that the depot supports the Apache fleet for. The items you see in yellow, our efforts have been ongoing for about a year now with the OEM, our ALC partners, as well as the depot. We'll be taking the main rotor swash plate and the tail rotor swash plate, which was previously an E-unique part, and through the overhaul process at CCAD turned it into a common part. So we can use the E-model swash plate on the Ds as well as the Es. Those pilot ready here in 18, so we're looking forward to that getting kicked off. We did have our success with our DEMWAR. Our airframe pilot was signed off in March of this year, so we're well down the path to the airframe maintenance capability here at the depot for the E. As time moves on, we'll learn more, and that'll be updated. The number of programs and the quantities that have been a work order to the depot, those are looking pretty constant in the near future, and quite honestly, in the long term, they're probably going to increase as we get more tech data. It's one thing Colonel Jackson mentioned, tech data is a challenge. Finding innovative ways to partner with our industry partners so we'll be able to meet our core and statutory requirements, and yet do all the functions we need to do will be a challenge, but we've been working with Boeing and we've been making some progress, and look forward to that continued success. Next chart. Aside from the depot, the normal organic programs, we have the PBL contract mentioned earlier through for the D and E unique items. Through that contract, they use commercial services agreement back to the depot. Boeing workloads the depot to support a subset of those parts. The collective grip you see here on the bottom is a commercial repair procedure that Boeing is developing. We're on contract with them to develop, get that qualified, and get that into the depots. So in the CSA, when they workload the depot, they'll get that work. We're also working some dynamic components. Nose gearbox and transmission are most notable. We're working those hard with the OEM to come up with a path forward that will enable us to get those back into the depot, either most likely through a commercial services agreement where they can workload the depot. Going to have a meeting this afternoon to discuss that in a little bit more detail, but I think at the end of the day, we'll win for all of us. It'll be a win-win for the OEM and a win-win for us to be able to work together to meet those requirements. So other than that, I'll get off the stage and pass things to the left.
Well, good morning. My name is Colonel Greg Fortier, and on behalf of Team Chinook and the PM Cargo family, thanks for having me. I was last here 11 years ago as a young major looking for a graduate school project, and CCAD was kind enough to let me walk that AAA recap line for the UH-60 once upon a time, and we managed to pass that and went off to Naval Test Pilot School, and away we go. And the rest is history. I have two ACAT-1 product managers, Lieutenant Colonel Danielle Medaglia. She is the CH-47F Block 1 PM, and like we say in the office these days, the 15 and a half years of the money-infested womb of Block 1 is now over. We are down at the end of our production line. We have 4 cabs left to field, and I'll talk more about that later. But 411 aircraft out of possibly 465, depending on the next mark, but 461 to date. So she's working real hard to look for opportunities and look anywhere and everywhere to get things done most efficiently. And then Lieutenant Colonel John Schmidt is a product manager for the Block 2 program. And if your grandfather flew Chinooks, or if my grandfather flew Chinooks and looked down the ramp, and he may say, the A model looks a lot like the F Block 2, but if you take a deeper look and you kind of double click on the F Block 2, what it really means, you're going to find a significantly different airplane. So Let's transition to the next chart, please. So here's where we're at. The Block 2 program was born essentially out of a need to do a few things. First and foremost, to buy back capability in mission equipment packages, which had been lost over the 2007 to 2000, to date. Almost 4,300 pounds of MEP added to the airplane, obviously significantly degrading the payload capability. It was also born out of the need to address the obsolescence issues in the MH-47G. So we have an authorization of 473 for F, 69 Gs. The average life of the airframe of the G is 45 years old, and they've been flying them at 54,000 pounds gross weight for a long, long time and paying big penalties. So it really was time to do it. The other hidden secret in here is that if we were to do nothing with the F model program, in 2021 we would have to make a recap decision anyway, thereby probably costing us 2x of what we're doing with Block 2. And then finally is to address some of the ONS issues. The world today with respect to data and analytics and RAM and all the analysis that we're conducting in the PM shop is much different, as you know, here at CCAD than it was 10, 12 years ago, and we're getting after some of those challenges. So we find ourselves now in a unique spot. We have a handful of D models that are divested. It shows 47 remaining. There are actually only 2 that are unspoken for to date. F models, as I told you, up to 411 as of yesterday, and then of course the G's where we're at. We'll finish production in the 2020 timeframe with the Fs. Like I said, we'll field the 4 cabs, Fort Riley, and then the PACOM aircraft and cabs, and then we'll start to actually be the first in the chute for PEO Aviation to truly transition to somewhat of a sustainment model, which has got a lot of people uneasy because we've never quite gotten at this point before in our history. And then with respect to the Block 2 program, and I'll talk in detail about that, we are 60 days into the EMD process, and it is important that we remind everybody that the D in EMD stands for development. Because there's folks are a little sometimes impatient and sometimes want the aircraft tomorrow. The bottom line is we're taking just under 2 years to build an aircraft. The first fuselage or the first aircraft is at Boeing, the center section, section 43, just arrived there, and then the other 2 aircraft, so EMD tail numbers 001, 002, and 003 are on site and getting built. In the 19 timeframe, we'll take those aircraft and we'll start a comprehensive and complementary test program, which will span everywhere from Mesa to Redstone to Pax River, and with the intent of doing a limited user test at the end of calendar year 20 to then inform a milestone C decision in the 21 timeframe. So we've all heard it in acquisition before. You have cost, schedule, and performance. You can choose 2. We unfortunately are having to choose 3 at the moment. And we'll get after that as best we can with respect to schedule, with a keen eye on performance. In the gold boxes, I like to highlight the SOF aircraft. While we will be as common as we've ever been, the SOF aircraft are still just a little bit different as well in the Block 2 program. So you can see the ACRB, that's the Advanced Chinook rotor blade. You've got the rotor and drivetrain upgrades. Those are common to both platforms. You got the nose and the tail sections are common to both, and then the SOF aircraft will get a new center section, much different than what they've had in the past, and then we'll also do an improved drivetrain on both. One big difference for the conventional F models, we will have a single-piece 1,110-gallon fuel cell, which is much different than the current 3-piece, as you guys know here at CCAD, fuel cell. So we're looking forward to an additional 20 minutes of operating time, essentially, with that fuel, and then keeping an eye on the weight reductions. When it's all said and done, we will have removed 2 of the 3 limiting factors in an aviation operation for a cab commander. That is, the aircraft's either limited by its transmission, by its engine, or by its airframe. And in this case, we'll have removed 2 of the 3 with hopefully an engine decision sometime in the 23-24 timeframe to really realize some of that 4K 95, 6K 95 performance that's so desperately needed in the cabs. Next chart. Just a recap of the fielding plan. This is hot and heavy for those that are not tracking. All the multi-year 2 aircraft that are coming off the line are getting sourced into Compo 1 units, and then Compo 1 units with multi-year 1s will then cascade that into 2 per the DA directive. We'll be finishing up That's Honduras at the end of second quarter FY20. 2ID is the final PACOM unit, third quarter FY19. Next chart. Okay, some of the ongoing developments. The bottom two are software, and I won't bore you, won't take up our precious time here on that, but I do want to touch briefly on the top two in the box. And first is the advanced Chinook rotor blade. So this is about as unique a rotor blade as you're going to find, mainly because it has an anhedral and a dihedral turn in it. So we've all seen rotor blades that are flat and they're twisted slightly, and then they have a tip at the end that are maybe cathedral or thinned out to increase performance. This was designed to improve the hover performance while still trying to maintain the forward flight performance. So we all know that that's a physics equation at the end of the day, and we're doing everything we can to get back all of that forward flight envelope, because we did a proof of concept back in April of this past year and have realized significant hover performance gains for the aircraft, to the tune of, at sea level, upwards of almost 20,000 pounds in the Block 2 for sea level performance. So why did we do that? Well, essentially it's because we don't want to have the Army's heavy lift helicopter not be able to lift the Joint Lightweight Tactical Vehicle, if that makes any sense. So the Joint Lightweight Tactical Vehicle in most variants are 19,000 and below. There are some that are above that. Nevertheless, the current F with a full bag of gas and crew could not do that. The challenge that we have, the reason why it's turned up and then turned down, it's turned up quite simply because it would hit the fuselage of the aircraft if we didn't turn it up with the tunnel covers. I am a 20-year aviator. I've been blessed to be rated in many airplanes. The Chinook is a fascinating machine. I learn something new every day, and we're really getting after the forward flight performance of this, to the tune of the fact that we're going to model, or we're currently modeling all of those gains, but also going to be able to fly them, these prototype blades, again before we actually get an aircraft off the line, which is really, really unique to inform ourselves as we continue to develop this process in a very constrained timeline. The last thing I want to talk about on this chart is the CPHE, the Cargo Platform Health Environment. I never thought I'd see a day where you could hook a computer into a helicopter and get the appropriate rotor track and balance solution without spending 8 to 10 hours with wires and cables and sensors and everything that the folks in this room understand with, the RADS kits and the AVA kits, and you pick the kit for the platform. But I was out at the airfield at Redstone recently and had pilots come back and say, man, it's really bumpy today, it's out of track. We walked out with the computer, we plugged it into an Ethernet port, we had a solution, we dialed it in, and the next flight was good to go. So pretty amazing stuff, and really the sky's the limit there on the things that we're being able to do with respect to the avionics architecture and the flight control systems as well. Next chart. Quick snapshot of what we're doing in theater still. So we still have 33 aircraft in theater. We track these daily for performance, and we're learning great things out of in the RAM environment as well. As we know, for those of us that went into Afghanistan back in 2002 and 2003 timeframe, D models and engines that were sucking down more sand than they ever should have. Really good lessons being learned at the PM, and keeping a keen eye on RAM to make the necessary fixes to understand all the implementation. Next chart. Okay, just a couple charts on the teaming, and then love to take your questions after the utility brief. We've had a long engine partnership. I spent the first 45 minutes of the morning downstairs with folks from CCAD and your director talking about trying to get more Chinooks into the fight. Fight at CCAD, that is. And I will tell you that, as I said about the money-infested womb of Block 1, the best part about not having any money is that you actually have to think. So we are looking at things, and any and all things, in terms of what makes sense for the program office in terms of bringing Chinooks down here, and we owe you that answer, quite frankly. I've been in the job 90 days, and the analysis is still to be done there. But the long time, I know we had the recap program till 2012 here, and then, like as we said, the production was winding down and money's drying up. Looking at solutions, going to continue this partnership. The future for FY18 is bright in the fact that we'll have 24 programs here in FY18. Next. much like the airframe partnership I'll talk about in a minute, the engine partnership, the TELUS contract will expire 18 months and 24 months respectively. No current impact there. We're tracking all that, and we'll still maintain OEM support. We understand it's a team effort. We understand that when there is battle damage or those kind of things, that there's an industrial base and there's a need and there's a desire here and expertise here to get the job done. And we look forward, frankly, to the future and teaming and looking for better opportunities. Next chart. And then with respect to the airframe, so I understand that this is, quite frankly, not enough for you, but we're doing everything we can to maintain that warm production base for both 17 and 18. And then we have some F model component programs, some of which are within the pilot stages for 18, and then long-standing programs, doing what we can within the constraints of the office. It is a very, very unique time for the Cargo Program Office. Just 2 years ago, we had 4 times as much money than we have this FY. So I took the job on 29 June, and I had the great displeasure of 30 days into the job of telling 40 of our matrix personnel that I'm sorry, I can't pay for you for FY18 and FY19. So real challenges, but within those challenges comes opportunities, and we're not going to stop doing our homework to be prepared to try to capitalize on those opportunities. And next chart. And then same thing, just one more point on the airframe piece with the TELUS contract and the support with AMCOM and DLA accordingly. And we also talked at length downstairs this morning about the engineering support as well. Next. With that, I will pass it along to utility.
Good morning. My name is Charles Stropridge. I'm the acting PSM for the Utility Helicopter Project Office. Work for Colonel Billy Jackson. Next slide, please. Oh, this is the evolution of the Black Hawk. Right now, we have 7 configurations of the Black Hawk. What we're trying to move to is 4 configurations over on the left side of the chart. We're going to have UH-60M, and HH-60M, UH-60 Victor, and HH-60 Victor. And this is really how we get in there on this timeline here. And next chart, please. And our outlook is, this is the recap program, what we got now, currently going on with the at the CCAD depot. And as you can see, in 19, we'll have 2 lines going with the, we'll have 2 configurations that's going to be delivered to. We'll have the Victor configuration, the L to Victor, and the L to L. And with the total output of what we're doing today is 36. And this is our future program of how much work we'll continue to have with the depot, and we don't see it going down anytime soon for the utility helicopter. Next slide, please. Here's our AAA recap to AAA to L recap program. As you can see in the slide, the black indicates the AAA program, and the red indicates the A to L program. Next slide, please. This is the same, different slides, and these are the upgrades that you get in the L to L recap to a Victor program in detail. The Victor changes in red. Next slide, please. This is the Victor program. The Victor program basically is to make the Victor aircraft Mike-like. So when you have a unit that's going to have the CAC, unit's going to have Victor aircraft in the CAC. If they are Mike model qualified, they'll have a short orientation to be Victor qualified. And so you'll have pilots that can fly both airframes. You would have to go through the Mike model program first to become Victor program. It's just like we used to do it back in the day when we had all the Bell products, right? You had a pilot that could fly both type of airframes. I think it's going to be probably easier to maintain currency for the IPs and the flight thing. But these are the improvements that we're going to make and put the digital cockpit in the Victor. We got EDM1 flying right now. back at Redstone, and we are building EDM2. Next slide, please. And this is the current work and the future work we're going to be doing, and at CCAT. This is bringing some concerns to some people because, look, we're going to have the Victor program going through, and you're going to end up with the, in 2032, you're going to end up rebuilding or recapping Mike models. And the number of Mike models we're looking at to have to maintain the fleet is 65 per year. You know, that's a long ways out, so we'll probably have to do some thinking outside of the box to be able to recap that number of aircraft, both versions, a conversion of a Lima to a Victor and recapping Mike models. That's a long ways out, but that's what we're looking at right now. And we got one more production contract in place. We just started multi-year 9 contract with our OEM, Sikorsky, and we're working on multi-year 10. Next slide, please. This is the work we are doing with our OEM, Sikorsky, and CCAT, and AMCOM, ALC. Basically, we are getting the analysis from Sikorsky on our Mike model components, and we're bringing that information over to AED engineers plus the engineers at CCAT. They take that analysis and they write MEOs. We bring a team from AMCOM and the PM down to CCAT, and we're writing our MWOs, and we're converting MWOs from Alpha Lima only components to maybe some of them are joint components. Now we're making them Alpha Lima Mike components, you know, and some of the components are going to be unique, but we have been working on this program since 2016, a little bit before that, but 2016 on, and it's been very successful. We've got a team coming in next week, back down to CCAT, working there with MED, and like I said, SSD from AMCOM, and the ALC tech writers and provisioners, and they all working together on this. This top one is your airframe. The top one is our airframe, is that TO5? TO5, that's the dynamic components, and the bottom is your airframe analysis. By 2020, we should have all this done, and we'll create a airframe dim war. These are mostly components. We're doing all the analysis for the structure right now, and by 2020, we'll be able to write a Mike model dim war for our first aircraft that's scheduled for scheduled overhaul is 2027, and we'll have everything in place there. We'll have everything in place, so by the time we get ready to go to the to have to recap an aircraft, we have all the documentation in place. Next slide, please. That's my last slide. If we have any questions, we'll turn it back over to Colonel Jackson, and we'll take questions.
Okay, ready for questions? Need a hand up here somewhere, come on.
If I could ask just a question from a logistics standpoint, what is the commonality between the Victor and the Mike in the logistics system? I mean, it's Mike-like as you describe it, but what's the commonality and what's the difference?
It's a good question, sir. So really, if you want to put Victor in a nutshell, Victor is a Lima with a new cockpit. So from a logistics perspective, in the work we're going to ask CCAD to do here in terms of the production line, we're really going to ask them to, we have an opportunity to rewire the aircraft, right, for both efficiency, for future upgrades, especially for National Guard aircraft that have unique equipment. Obviously, reliability is much better with the new wiring harness. It's going to save time on the production line for Colonel Lancetta's team, reduce the labor rate for us, or excuse me, reduce the labor hours associated with that effort for us. But it's basically stripping out the entire cockpit and putting a new cockpit in there. So from a sustainment perspective, we're not asking to levy a huge burden on AMCOM in terms of new components for the platform. You know, we always have to look back and say, well, how did we get here? What was the rationale behind this decision? So it was a couple of things really were in play during the time we got a Victor milestone development decision. One was the focus for the Army for future vertical lift would be capability set 3. So how do we bridge that gap, right? We know Mike Model's a great aircraft, but we know Mike Model's not the utility variant for the future. But how can we leave behind a significant amount of our Black Hawk fleet in terms of situational awareness and digital capability and ability to integrate digital equipment onto the platform? And this was a low-cost solution. And the other part that's key to this is we were going to be recapitalizing L aircraft anyway. When you couple that opportunity and that cost with the APA bill for the Victor cockpit, it made a whole lot of sense for the Army. And I will tell you, it's going to be a great program. It's a program that's on schedule. It's going to meet a lot of the Army's needs while we determine what the fiscal future looks like. It's a great risk reduction for our fleet and our capability.
Other questions? Questions?
Greg and Billy, so in this era of change, how do you guys see ASALT fitting into Big Army? I mean, we're already working well together.
Let me get him, sir. Sir Al, you missed that part where I asked nobody to ask us any questions about acquisition reform. Yeah. So speaking for General Todd, right? So we would not want to get ahead and discuss anything regarding ASALT. But Al, I will tell you that we don't believe our mission's going to change. Our mission's well defined, and quite frankly, our focus is continue to maintain the expertise we have, to continue to execute whatever mission the Army gives us and whatever role the Army gives us. We do believe, right, and rightfully so, that we will become less in the requirements phase and maybe perhaps less in the sustainment phase. But our core mission has always been a milestone B to a full-rate production decision. That's really where we bring it.
And I really ask it because I see a lot of good coordination and synchronization between our two different elements, and I'd love to see that continue. And that's really the only reason I ask that. It can only get better in my eyes.
I would agree.
Yeah, I can only just speak quickly. Again, not going to speak out of turn and get out in front of General Todd by any stretch, but having served, Billy and I both served up at ASALT as XOs, and when that ball started rolling, on Billy's watch, and then I was 2 after him, I think we can all agree that the coordination at our level is fantastic, and we make it work, right? And we just got to iron out all the other details and establish the lanes, and we're soldiers at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, we're soldiers, right? We're going to execute. Give us a mission, we're going to execute.
Okay, other questions? What else do we have? Yep, we got one back here. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm work with the MED folks down here, Wesley Cass. I was really curious on your tech data. You mentioned data rights. One of the things that's always been or at least my view, is the tech data having the accessibility to it. It helps us to do our sustainment role down here with MED, writing demoirs, developing new repairs and so forth. Do you see that ever getting a little bit better in the future, on the next future vertical lift or the next programs where we have access to good tech data?
I'll take a stab at that one. Yes, I do. I think we've got to do a better job at really setting expectations with the industrial base. And I think building trust that, hey, listen, we're not looking to reverse engineer the components that you're providing or the products you're providing, but we need the substantiation data to give to gentlemen like yourself so you can tell us whether that repair is airworthy. And so I think that will get better. I think it gets better through direct communications and, quite frankly, making sure what you put in your contract, it's very clear to who's competing for that effort, what it is that you need. And I will tell you, when I came into the Acquisition Corps in 2004, the concept was you, the government, don't need to own any data. And so we've come a little bit off that position. But I will tell you, managing that much data is not something the government is ready to do right now. And so I don't think we're ready for that task. Even if the Army decided we need to manage all the data down to a level 3 TDP, we don't have the infrastructure to manage that data. So yes, we will get better, and now we understand where we are.
And I can dovetail on that as well. I'm going to spend a couple hours this afternoon at MED and learn about all the demoirs with respect to Chinook, and all that work that's been done over the last 2 years is only going to feed the Block 2 program and going to set the conditions for that as well. So that dialogue is being had right now in the, we're getting ready to do critical design review here shortly in December, and then integrated baseline review. So all that dialogue is happening. It's only going to get better, and at least with respect to Chinook. And we enable us to identify the candidates for demoirs. I mean, upwards of 10, 12 additional demoirs that could be born out of the Chinook Block 2 program.
Additional questions? Run over here, Roy.
Yes, sir, and it dovetails with the tech data because it's also the right tech data, right? So what I'd also say is a lot of the fuselage parts are non-provisioned because we never plan to change them until we aviators tend to not crash alike. So you do a nosedive next time, you hit the tail next time, you roll it over the next time. So a lot of fuselage parts are not provisioned. Having the dimensional drawings allows the depot to help you on the non-CSI parts. So that's really critical for us to be able to return your aircraft back to the fight quickly. So I would tell you, the non-dimensional drawings does a depot no good. It does AD no good to help us. And then we get into the how to try to make something out of a sample, and that causes a lot of issues. So the right tech data is better than, even if it's just limited, it's better than no tech data. And then the other piece I would tell you is also on MWO kits. It seems that we don't buy the tech data for the A kit. So when we are in that crash sequence and I have to replace the hardware in the aircraft, we have a lot of B kits, the LRU, but we don't have the A kit tech data. So those are two pieces of tech data that are near and dear to my heart.
Thanks.
One more question. Time for one more. Or we go to break early.
Can I ask the panel to address, and it may be purely a money decision, okay, but I'm looking at your future plans and where you're going, and there is a limited number of new frames on every one of the production lines. Why are we doing that? I mean, we know the machining of the frames and stuff is so much better today, and I mean, it's $100,000 an airframe.
Well, one of the things that kind of escaped my mind in the heat of the briefing was the change in a program on the E-model. It is a reman program, and it was remanned initially just like it was from a Delta to an Echo. So you had Delta models that had Alpha model airframes. The first 43 Echo models, the LRIP were in the LRIP lot, were Alpha Delta Echo airframes. But cutting on number 44, all the E models are getting new fuselage. So the fuselage underneath, it's getting new fuselage, and that's one of the things that we're taking a look at with our product support providers is how we can get after helping speed up crash damage with a possible faster way taking that path.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of stuff is culture driven. We've got cultures that have to be massaged, and change is sometimes difficult. But there's ways we can go do that. If we can just get the mindset changed to embrace something else. Maybe in the past was a little bit different way of looking at things.
So, yes, sir. As far as Chinook goes, we're trying to adopt the new phrase of if you don't like change, let me know how irrelevant feels. So we're going to value relevance more than resisting change. With that said, when the F model line stops at 465, we'll be about 50-50 new versus reman. For Block 2, Right now, we're only currently going to use the side sections and the roof of Section 43 from the F Block 1s, and then everything else will be new, including floor. We actually do have a business case analysis going right now and Boeing owes us some answers on, okay, what does it really mean if we just go completely new with the fuselage? So point well taken, and we're certainly looking at that.
And sir, with the, we just had this conversation this morning, with the M model, because we got high-speed machine parts, one of the things that we're getting out of this analysis from our OEM 109, task order 109, will be that analysis. Do we repair high-speed machine parts, or do we replace them, or do they last longer than regular parts? So we'll have that information, and then we can do a business case analysis. And sometimes, as you know, the business case analysis doesn't support what we want to do, you know. But we are looking at that. We think we got far enough out, and that may be the right thing for us to do, because when we went through looking at another cabin for the legacy aircraft, I think it makes people start thinking about, you know, how do we do things different? If you remember my chart, it shows that we want to recap 65 Mike models, right? At the same time, create Victor models. You can't not do that the way we're doing business today. So that's the reason when we put that chart together, I mean, that number stuck out, and I know if Colonel Linsetto was sitting there, he probably would have jumped out. I think he already know that number. But that's where we got to go to keep the fleet upgraded. And I don't think we can get there the way we're manufacturing and building aircraft at the depot now. You know, we got to get more in line with how the OEMs build aircraft, I think. And I think we can do it. We could, without replacing cabins, if the BCA says the cabin is still in good shape with high-speed machine parts. But we got to have some help from the OEM, the depot, and everybody to come up with a better plan.
Okay, so let's have a round of applause for a great panel. I will tell you that you can see the family connection here between both the PEOs and CCAT. So you have been wonderful hosts to the PEOs, I'm telling you that. And next, about 3 weeks from now, when we get to Huntsville, they promised me they're going to have the same type of reciprocal family welcoming for you when you get to Huntsville. So thank you very much, gentlemen.